The sun blazed high in the sky, casting its golden light over the vast expanse of the Indian Ocean. The water sparkled like a field of blue diamonds, promising an adventure beneath the waves. Four friends Emma, Jack, Sophie, and Leo stood on the deck of their small boat, buzzing with excitement. They had planned this diving trip for months, eager to explore the vibrant coral reefs and the myriad of marine life that awaited them below. Captain Marlowe, a grizzled, weather-worn man with years of experience, gave them a quick rundown of safety procedures. His voice was gruff, but his eyes held a twinkle of adventure. Remember, stay together and keep an eye on your air supply. I'll be right here when you surface. With that, the friends donned their gear and slipped into the inviting water. The world below was a mesmerizing kaleidoscope of colors and creatures. Fish of every hue darted among the corals, and the gentle sway of sea anemones created an underwater ballet. The divers were soon lost in the beauty, forgetting the world above. Time passed in a blissful blue. They marveled at the wonders of the ocean, pointing out schools of fish, graceful rays, and the occasional curious turtle. Emma, the most experienced diver, kept an eye on her watch. After an hour and a half, she signaled to the others that it was time to surface. Breaking through the surface, they expected to see their boat nearby, ready to haul them aboard. But as they looked around, their smiles faded. The boat was gone. Panic set in immediately. "Where's the boat?" Leo exclaimed, his voice tinged with fear. "Captain Marlowe said he'd be right here." Emma tried to steady her breathing. "Maybe he had to move because of the currents. We need to stay calm. He'll come back for us." The sun began its slow descent toward the horizon, and the once warm water now felt cold and unforgiving. They huddled together, trying to conserve energy and stay warm. Hours passed, and the reality of their situation sank in. They were alone in the vast, open sea. "Do you think they're looking for us?" Sophie asked, her voice trembling. "They have to be," Jack replied, trying to sound confident. "We just need to stay together and wait." As darkness fell, the sea around them turned into an inky black void. The gentle lapping of the waves was the only sound, a stark contrast to the earlier cacophony of their dive. Just as they were beginning to lose hope, Jack spotted something in the distance. "Look, lights!" he shouted, pointing excitedly. But as the lights drew closer, their hearts sank. It wasn't a rescue boat. Instead, they saw the unmistakable dorsal fins slicing through the water. A pod of sharks was heading straight for them. Panic set in. They thrashed in the water, trying to fend off the approaching predators. The sharks, sensing their fear and vulnerability, circled closer. Leo, the youngest of the group, was the first to scream as a shark's powerful jaws clamped around his leg, dragging him under. His muffled cries and the thrashing of water were soon replaced by silence. "We need to stay still," Sophie cried, tears streaming down her face. They're attracted to the movement. But fear overwhelmed them. Jack tried to swim away, hoping to distract the sharks, but his efforts were futile. A massive shark lunged, and in an instant, he was gone. Emma and Sophie clung to each other, their bodies trembling with cold and terror. The sharks continued to circle, their cold, calculating eyes reflecting the moonlight. Sophie whispered prayers, her voice barely audible over the sound of the waves. Another shark lunged, and Emma felt Sophie being pulled from her grasp. She was alone now, floating in the vast, merciless ocean. The silence was deafening, broken only by the occasional splash of a fin. Hours passed, though it felt like an eternity. Exhaustion took its toll, and Emma's vision blurred. Just as she was about to give in to the cold embrace of the sea, she saw a light in the distance. She blinked, thinking it was a hallucination brought on by fatigue, but the light grew brighter, closer. A boat, a real rescue boat this time. With the last of her strength, Emma waved her arm, a feeble signal of life. Strong arms pulled her aboard, and she collapsed on the deck, sobbing uncontrollably. The rescue team, alerted by Captain Marlowe, who had returned to find his divers missing, had finally found her. Emma was the sole survivor. The memories of that night haunted her, a constant reminder of the friends she had lost and the terror they had faced. The ocean, once a place of beauty and wonder, had become a graveyard of nightmares. And though she survived, the scars, both physical and emotional, would remain forever. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months, but the horror of that night stayed with Emma. She attended memorial services for her friends, standing by their families, sharing their grief. The once vibrant and adventurous young woman now wore a cloak of sorrow and guilt. She sought therapy, hoping to find a way to cope with the nightmares that plagued her sleep. Every night she was back in the water, surrounded by the shadows of her friends and the ever-present threat of the sharks. Her therapist encouraged her to talk about her experience, to confront the trauma head-on. "It wasn't your fault, doctor," Harris said gently during one of their sessions. "You did everything you could. Sometimes, nature is just cruel." Emma nodded, tears streaming down her face. "I know, but I can't shake the feeling that I should have done more. I should have been able to save them." "You survived because of your training and strength, doctor," Harris continued. "You have to find a way to honor their memory, to live a life they would be proud of." With time, Emma began to take small steps toward healing. She reconnected with her love for the ocean, volunteering at a marine conservation center. She shared her story with others, raising awareness about the dangers of diving and the importance of safety precautions. One day, she received a letter from Captain Marlowe. It was filled with regret and sorrow, apologizing for what had happened. He explained that a sudden storm had forced him to move the boat, and by the time he returned, the divers were gone. He had searched for hours before calling for help, but it was too late. Emma wrote back, thanking him for his efforts. She told him about her work at the conservation center, how she was trying to turn her pain into something positive. She knew that holding on to anger and blame would only keep her trapped in the past. Years later, Emma stood on the shore, watching the sun set over the ocean. The waves lapped gently at her feet, and for the first time in a long while she felt a sense of peace. She had come to terms with the tragedy, accepting that some questions would never have answers. She smiled as she thought of her friends, imagining them diving through the coral reefs in a place where the water was always warm and the sharks were never a threat. She knew they would be proud of her, and she was determined to live a life that honored their memory. The ocean, once a place of nightmares, had become a place of healing. Emma found solace in its depths, knowing that she had faced its darkest moments and come out stronger. She was a survivor, and her story was one of resilience, courage, and the unbreakable bonds of friendship. I am a marine biologist that works for a small, government-funded agency that over time has been losing our grants slowly. At the time, we were exploring the abnormal geologic activity above the Mariana Trench, the deepest part of the Pacific Ocean, or technically really any ocean. Our mission was simple: to descend to about 700 meters, 2,300 feet, below the ocean surface in specialized atmospheric diving suits with hand-held equipment to measure any changes in readings. For the past 2 days, our boat's seismograph had been picking up strange readings, and while there was rumor our team had a deep-sea robot on its way. Like I mentioned previously, our funding was low, and if we ever saw that piece of equipment, all of us would have been extremely surprised. 2 of us were chosen to take the trip. Me, a fellow biologist, Amelia. Now let me explain why I was more excited than usual to take this deep-sea dive. Our team consisted of 6 men and 2 women, Amelia and Samantha. Samantha was your stereotypical marine biologist, rather plain and clumsy with pale white skin, kinky red hair, and a boyish figure that was both doughy but lacking in curves. Now Amelia, on the other hand, was her polar opposite and exclusively received all of the male attention on our missions. Amelia had grown up in France, and while her English was excellent, each word was laced with a soft French accent that deliciously rolled off her tongue. She stood about 5'8" with long tanned legs, a small waist, and breasts that were supple but fit her frame. While Samantha would wear a modest one-piece, Amelia would wear a string bikini, occasionally slipping off her top to tan her perfect breasts as she glistened in the sunlight. Amelia's dark brown hair almost reached her waist, and was surprisingly straight and tame, which is rare when exposed to as much sun and salt water as we often were. Unfortunately for the men, she laughed off all of our advances. A large sparking rock glistening on her left ring finger, essentially acting as her chastity belt. Anyway, Amelia and I suited up, wearing our specialized suits that allowed us to descend to great depths. In one hand, we held heavy-duty dive lights, in the other lightweight seismology equipment, and as we continued our descent, the light of the sun began to diminish. While the ocean above us flourished with life, the deeper we sank, the less wildlife was visible. I generally didn't specialize in deep sea diving, and while Amelia continued on with ease, I noticed how eerie it was to be surrounded by such a vast emptiness. The darkness that enveloped us was both claustrophobic and infinite, although even as I write these words cannot describe how absolutely alone, tiny and insignificant I felt. We were at about 650 meters now, and while the equipment was definitely picking up something irregular, there was nothing visible when we pointed our high-beam dive lights downward. There was only the black, open sea filled with looming, murky, dark water that obstructed our view of the bottom of the trench, obstructed our view of anything. Every 30 seconds or so, Amelia and I would shine our flashlights into each other's faces to exchange hand signals and make sure the other was okay. I decided it was time to head upwards back to the boat and shine my light onto Amelia's beautiful, angelic face. Illuminated with light, I caught her face just in time to see the panic in her eyes before she was suddenly dragged downwards, being pulled underneath at an unimaginable speed. Panicking, I dove after her, letting go of my equipment in order to swim faster, hoping I could catch her before she disappeared forever. I couldn't see what was pulling her down, only her flailing arms as she fought with all of her might to get away. Through the silence of the sea, I could faintly hear her muffled screaming through her highly padded suit. Swimming as fast as I possibly could, I finally managed to catch up with her and gripped onto one of her gloved hands. Yanking with all of my strength, I tried to pull her upwards, but whatever had a hold of Amelia was not letting go. She continued to plummet and now attached to her. I was being pulled downwards as well. Feeling the water rush past me at an unimaginable speed, I could feel my grip on Amelia's hand slipping away, and in one last attempt to save her, I sacrificed the flashlight in my right hand, struggling to grab onto her. I had been a second too late, and she slid out of my grasp, disappearing forever beneath me. Amelia's screams faded out, and now the remaining light from my flashlight was gone, the device quickly plummeting to the bottom of the sea. By then, there was nothing left. Nothing but darkness.